Ayla sat in the dim glow of the monitoring station's main console, her eyes tracing the rhythmic pulse of the signal indicators that flickered across the screen. She was alone, as usual, the only sentinel in a forgotten outpost orbiting a quiet star on the fringes of the Chyler system. Her job was monotonous, monitoring cosmic anomalies and tracking celestial patterns rarely disturbed by anything more exciting than a meteor shower. Suddenly, a sharp ping sounded, different from the usual hums. A blip, a strong, clear signal unlike anything she had cataloged before, appeared on the radar. She leaned forward, peering at the display, her heart beating faster. Could it be? The old stories from her childhood spun tales of a race called humans, explorers of the cosmos, but she had dismissed them as myths. "Zell, come look at this," she called out through her communicator, hoping her colleague might share in her discovery. Zell, who had been dozing in the small crew quarters, stumbled in, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What is it, Ayla?" "It's the middle of the night cycle. Look at this signal. It's organized, structured, it's not natural." "I think it's a ship," Ayla explained, her voice tinged with excitement. Zell yawned, squinting at the data. "A ship? Out here? Are you sure it's not just a satellite reflection or space debris?" Ayla shook her head. "No, it's moving too deliberately. And look here," she pointed at the screen where the signal originated. "It's coming from Sector 7G. Nothing man-made is out there." "Except for human ships, you mean?" Zell joked, chuckling at his own skepticism. Ayla didn't smile. "What if the stories are true, Zell? This could be our first contact with humans." The signal on the radar grew stronger, a sign that whatever was out there was approaching. Ayla's hands hovered over the communication panel. She hesitated, knowing that making contact was not her decision to make alone. "Should I alert the High Command?" she asked, her voice a mix of hope and uncertainty. Zell, now fully awake, reviewed the data more seriously. "Yes, and I'll prepare the docking bay. If that's a ship, we'll need to be ready for anything." As Zell left to make preparations, Ayla sent a priority message to the High Command, detailing the signal and its implications. Her mind raced with possibilities. Were the humans real? What would they look like? What would they want? She didn't have to wait long for a response. "Protocol demands we observe first. Do not engage directly until we understand their intentions." The reply came, stern and unequivocal. Turning back to the console, Ayla adjusted the sensors to get a clearer image of the incoming ship. As the first visual feed flickered to life on the screen, her breath caught in her throat. It was a ship, undoubtedly artificial, sleek, and unlike any design she had ever seen. "Zell, it's real. It's actually real," she called out, not taking her eyes off the screen. Zell returned to her side, his earlier skepticism forgotten. Together, they watched in awe as the ship, smooth, metallic, and gleaming under the light of her home star, drifted closer, its details becoming clearer with each passing moment. "Prepare the welcoming committee," Ayla said, a half-smile playing on her lips. "It looks like we have guests." The chapter sets the stage for an exciting interstellar interaction, focusing on the thrill of discovery and the potential of a first contact scenario, hinting at the adventures and challenges to come. Chapter 2, First Contact. Ayla stood by the observation window, her reflection faintly visible against the backdrop of stars. The alien ship hovered just outside the docking bay, a vision of unfamiliar technology. Her heart was racing, and she wasn't sure whether it was fear, excitement, or both. Zell came up beside her, carrying a portable translator. "Command says to proceed carefully. They don't want any surprises." "Carefully?" Ayla repeated with a nervous laugh. "How do you carefully greet a myth?" "They're not myths if they're parked in our bay," Zell said dryly. "Come on. Let's meet them before they start thinking we're the unfriendly ones." Together, they headed down to the docking area, their footsteps echoing in the quiet halls. Ayla glanced at Zell. "Do you think they're hostile?" He shrugged. "No idea. But from the look of their ship, they're more advanced than us in some ways. If they wanted a fight, they'd probably have started one already." As the airlock hissed open, Ayla and Zell stepped forward. A tall figure emerged from the alien ship, dressed in a streamlined, silver-toned suit that reflected the bay's dim lighting. The being removed its helmet, revealing a human face, clean-shaven, sharp-featured, and calm. The human studied them for a moment, then spoke, his voice clear and steady. "I'm Captain Nathan Ross of the Terran Alliance exploratory vessel Odyssey. We're here on a peaceful mission. No weapons, no hostility. We mean no harm." Ayla glanced at Zell, who nodded. "I'm Ayla, monitoring officer for this outpost. This is my colleague Zell. You're the first humans we've ever encountered." Nathan's brow furrowed slightly. "Humans? That means your people know of us?" "Only in stories," Ayla said. "Legends passed down through generations. Many thought you were just a myth." Nathan smiled faintly. "Well, here I am. I assure you, I'm very real." Zell stepped forward. "What brings you to this sector? We've had no official contact with human ships before." Nathan gestured toward his vessel. "We're part of an exploration initiative. We chart new systems, study their resources, and learn about the civilizations we encounter. It was chance that brought us here. Your station's signal was the first sign of advanced life we picked up in this area." Ayla tilted her head. "If you don't mind me asking, how long has your species been traveling the stars?" Nathan considered her question. "For several centuries now, but this is the first time we've ventured this far. Your system is on the edge of our current map territory." The two sides stood there, studying each other. Ayla finally broke the silence. "Would you like a tour of our station? It's not much, but it's home." Nathan nodded. "I'd appreciate that. It's always fascinating to see how others live." As they walked the halls of the station, Nathan asked questions, genuinely interested in the outpost's purpose and the lives of its crew. He asked Ayla how long she had been stationed there, and she told him about her years of monitoring quiet space lanes, never expecting anything more exciting than a meteor shower. "And now you're walking through a human's first steps into your world," Nathan said with a smile. "It must feel surreal." "It does," Ayla admitted. "I never thought I'd see the day. Zell and I have talked about the old stories, but we never imagined this." Zell chuckled. "I admit I was skeptical, but seeing your ship, hearing you speak, it's a lot to take in." They showed Nathan the command center, the small crew quarters, and the observation deck. Nathan's curiosity seemed endless. He asked about their energy sources, their communication systems, even the food they ate. "This station is modest, but it's clearly well designed for its purpose," Nathan observed. "Your people have a practical elegance in their technology." Ayla couldn't help but feel a small sense of pride. "It serves us well. And now, it's given us a chance to meet you." As the tour ended, Nathan turned to Ayla and Zell. "Thank you for your hospitality. I hope we can learn much from each other in the days ahead." Ayla nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. "We'll prepare a secure channel so you can speak with our high command. This is a historic moment for us." "It's historic for us too," Nathan said, his voice warm and sincere. "The first meeting between two civilizations. It's a privilege to be here." Zell clapped Nathan on the back. "We're just as curious about you as you are about us. Let's see what we can learn together." As the three of them stood on the observation deck, looking out at Nathan's ship in the distance, Ayla felt a strange but welcome mix of wonder and hope. Two worlds had finally crossed paths, and the adventure was only just beginning. Chapter 3, Language of Curiosity. Nathan tapped his comm unit, his brow furrowed as he stared at the alien symbols glowing on the interface screen. "I'm telling you, Ayla, these characters look nothing like our usual linguistic structures. Where do you even start deciphering something like this?" Ayla laughed softly, leaning over the console beside him. "They're not so hard once you understand the basic phonetic patterns. Think of them as, what do you call it, building blocks. Like letters," Nathan suggested, his voice laced with skepticism. "But they don't follow any alphabet I've ever seen." "Exactly. They're not letters. They're sounds, or rather clusters of sounds. Our written language is more like a set of musical notes. Each symbol represents a specific tone sequence. If you match the notes, you get the word. She traced one of the glowing shapes with her finger. Here, this one. Ayla hummed a sequence of 3 distinct tones. Means star. Now you try. Nathan frowned, humming the same sequence awkwardly. His voice cracked on the last note, and Ayla smirked. Not bad for a first attempt. But it's not just about hitting the notes. It's the flow. It's like singing a song. Remind me never to perform at one of your concerts, Nathan muttered, shaking his head. We humans are better at straightforward, linear systems. One symbol, one sound. This feels artistic. That's because it is. Language isn't just a tool for communication. It's an art form, Ayla said, her tone growing more serious. Our ancestors believed that words should carry beauty, even if no one else ever heard them. That's why we write this way. Nathan stared at the console, letting her explanation sink in. So you're saying your entire written language is like poetry? In a sense, yes. That's why we take care in how we say things, how we write them. It's part of our identity. Zell entered the room, looking amused at their exchange. Nathan, I don't think I've ever seen anyone struggle so much with something so simple. Ayla's practically handing it to you. Nathan shot him a wry grin. Not all of us are born with a gift for alien calligraphy, Zell. It's not calligraphy, Ayla said, playfully shoving Zell's arm. It's about understanding the culture behind it. And yet here you are, trying to teach him our sacred tones. Zell teased, leaning against the wall. Maybe he needs a more hands-on approach. Nathan raised an eyebrow. What's more hands-on than singing along? Zell shrugged. You could start by speaking our language more. Don't just hum. Try forming actual sentences. That's not a bad idea, Ayla agreed, turning to Nathan. You know a few words now. Let's see if you can string them together. What do you remember? Nathan cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. Chala? He looked at Ayla, who nodded encouragingly. It means peaceful night, right? That's right. Ayla clapped her hands. You see? You're getting it. Now try another one. Say, Chala Ayla. Nathan squinted at her. Wait, that means peaceful night, Ayla? Exactly. You're greeting me properly. Zell smirked. A proper greeting. You should have led with that, Nathan. Maybe she wouldn't think you're such a hopeless case. Thanks, Zell, Nathan said dryly. Real supportive. Hey, I'm just saying, she's putting a lot of effort into teaching you. You should at least try not to sound like a malfunctioning translator unit. Ayla gave Zell a mock glare. Leave him alone. He's doing fine. Everyone struggles at first. Yeah, well, not everyone gets a private tutor, Zell quipped, earning another playful shove from Ayla. Nathan watched their exchange with a faint smile. Despite Zell's teasing, it was clear that he and Ayla shared a close camaraderie. And as awkward as Nathan felt stumbling through their language, he was grateful for their patience. I'll keep practicing, he said finally. If I'm going to be here a while, I might as well learn to say more than peaceful night. Good, Ayla said, her voice warm. The more you practice, the easier it'll get. And before long, you'll sound as natural as one of us. That'll be the day, Nathan muttered, but he smiled nonetheless. Ayla returned the smile. You've already taken the first step. Just keep at it, and soon you'll be singing with the best of us. Zell chuckled. And maybe then you'll stop driving Ayla crazy with your off-key humming. Zell, Ayla scolded, though her laughter betrayed her annoyance. Nathan grinned. Guess I'll have to prove you wrong. The three of them continued to work on Nathan's language skills, turning what started as a simple lesson into a lively, enjoyable exchange. As Nathan began to grasp more of their unique linguistic patterns, he found himself drawn not just to the challenge of learning, but to the shared connection it fostered. For the first time, he felt like he was beginning to bridge the gap between their worlds, not just through technology, but through understanding. Chapter 4. The Gala of Two Worlds. The communal hall was alight with motion and sound. Silver and emerald banners swayed gently from the vaulted ceiling, reflecting the glow of floating orbs that cast warm, shifting hues across the gathering crowd. Ayla tugged at the edge of her sleeve, trying to appear calm as her people's cultural gala unfolded around her. She had attended these events countless times before, but tonight felt different. It wasn't just another celebration. Tonight they had a human guest, Nathan. Nathan stood a few paces away, surveying the crowd with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He wore a newly made tunic gifted by Ayla's council, a gesture meant to show welcome. The tunic's intricate design, a blend of swirling, woven patterns, contrasted sharply with the simpler, utilitarian outfits he was accustomed to. He glanced at Ayla, who caught his gaze and smiled. "I feel like I'm underdressed," he said, leaning closer so only she could hear. "You look fine," Ayla replied, though her own nervousness made her voice waver slightly. "It suits you better than you think." "I'm not so sure about that," Nathan said, adjusting the tunic's collar. "This embroidery feels like it belongs in a museum." Zell joined them, holding 2 small crystal goblets filled with a shimmering blue liquid. He offered one to Nathan. "Here, it's traditional to start with a toast. It's a simple custom even you can manage." "Thanks," Nathan said, accepting the drink and eyeing it suspiciously. "What exactly is this?" "It's made from the nectar of the lichen flower," Ayla explained. "It's sweet and slightly fermented, not too strong." Nathan swirled the liquid in his goblet before raising it. "To what? What's the proper thing to toast at an event like this?" "To learning," Ayla said quickly, lifting her own goblet. "And to the connections we're forming." Nathan smiled at that. "To learning and connections." He clinked his goblet gently against hers, and they both drank. The drink was indeed sweet, with a hint of warmth as it went down. Nathan nodded approvingly. "Not bad. It's an acquired taste," Zell said. "But if you have enough, even you might start to enjoy our music and dancing." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Dancing?" Ayla's cheeks flushed. "It's part of the gala. But it's not required," she added hastily. "You can just observe if you'd rather not." Nathan set his goblet down. "Dancing's not a problem. I'm just not sure I'll get the steps right." "Trust me, you won't," Zell teased. "But that's half the fun." The music shifted, a lilting melody carried by a blend of string-like instruments and hauntingly beautiful vocals. The hall grew quieter as the first dancers moved to the center floor, their movements graceful and deliberate. Ayla watched, her fingers lightly tapping the rhythm against her goblet. Nathan noticed. "You know the steps," he said, more a statement than a question. "Of course," she replied. "We learn them from an early age." "And you think you could teach me?" Ayla's eyes widened. "You want me to teach you now?" "Well, not here and now," Nathan said, laughing. "But if we're going to be sharing knowledge, I might as well give it a shot." Zell leaned in. "He's braver than I thought." Ayla glanced at Zell, then back at Nathan. "All right, just follow my lead. It's easier than it looks." She stepped into the open space beside him and took his hand. Her touch was light but steady, and Nathan felt a slight rush of nerves as the other dancers made way for them. The music shifted again, and Ayla began to move. "Step forward with your left, then back with your right," she instructed softly. "It's a simple 4-count pattern, like this." Nathan tried to follow, though his movements were stiff at first. "Like this?" he asked, glancing down at their feet. "Close," Ayla said with a smile. "Relax a little. The movements should flow, not feel forced." "I'll try," Nathan replied, letting himself loosen up. He focused on her instructions, matching her steps as best he could. Slowly, the awkwardness faded, replaced by a sense of rhythm. Ayla's guidance was patient, her tone encouraging. "Now a slight turn," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Just shift your weight and follow me." Nathan did as she said, and for a brief moment, he forgot the curious gazes of the crowd. The music, the steps, and Ayla's quiet encouragement drew him in. He wasn't a dancer by any means, but with Ayla leading, it felt surprisingly natural. You're getting it, Ayla said softly, her eyes meeting his. Nathan smiled, realizing he was starting to enjoy himself. It's not so bad. Not bad at all, Ayla agreed, her tone warm. As the dance continued, Nathan found himself appreciating not just the beauty of the movements, but the cultural depth behind them. Each step, each turn seemed to carry meaning. He wasn't just learning a dance. He was glimpsing a part of Ayla's world. When the music finally ended, the hall erupted in applause. Ayla's people cheered, some smiling at the sight of a human attempting their traditional dance. Ayla stepped back, her cheeks faintly flushed. See? I knew you could do it, she said. Nathan chuckled. Only because you're a good teacher. Zell clapped him on the shoulder. Not bad for a first-timer. You didn't even trip. That's high praise coming from you, Nathan replied, grinning. Come on, Zell said, motioning toward the refreshment table. You've earned another drink. As the three of them moved away from the dance floor, Nathan glanced at Ayla, feeling a sense of camaraderie and connection he hadn't expected. He'd come to this station as a stranger, but in that moment he felt like he belonged. Chapter 5: Whispers of Doubt. Ayla sat in the station's common area, staring at the console that displayed the latest system data. Her thoughts drifted back to the gala from the previous night. She had never imagined that a human, someone she had only read about in half-forgotten stories, could adapt so quickly to her world. Nathan's willingness to embrace their customs had impressed her. And yet, a lingering tension hung in the air. Zell entered, his brow furrowed as he scanned a handheld tablet. The council isn't thrilled about our new friend, you know? Ayla looked up, her heart sinking slightly. What did they say? They're cautious, as usual, Zell replied. They keep asking why he's really here. They're worried about his ship's technology, about his intentions. You know how they are. Anything new is a potential threat. Ayla frowned. He hasn't done anything. Sure, but that's not how they see it. They think he's holding back, keeping secrets. And what do you think? Ayla asked, her voice quieter now. Zell sighed, sitting down across from her. I think he's sincere, but I also think the council is right to be cautious. We don't know what humans are really like. For all we know, he's a scout, and his people might not be as friendly as he is. Ayla shook her head. You've spent time with him. You've seen how he reacts to our traditions, our culture. He's not a threat. Maybe, Zell admitted, but try telling that to the council. They don't like unknowns, and he's the biggest unknown they've seen in generations. Ayla leaned back, letting out a slow breath. What do they want from us, then? Should we send him away? Pretend this never happened. They haven't decided yet, Zell said, but they're watching closely. They want to know everything he says and does. Everything? Ayla repeated, the word heavy on her tongue. Before Zell could respond, the door slid open and Nathan stepped in. He looked between them, sensing the tension. Did I interrupt something? No, Ayla said quickly, forcing a smile. We were just going over some routine data. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Routine, huh? Sure doesn't sound like it. Zell set down his tablet. Just council politics. Nothing you need to worry about. Nathan leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. Council politics? Is this about me? Ayla hesitated, but Nathan's directness left her little room to maneuver. They're just being cautious, she said carefully. It's not personal. Sounds personal, Nathan said, his tone steady but firm. If they have concerns, I'd rather address them openly. I'm not here to cause trouble. I came in peace. We know, Ayla said, meeting his gaze, but convincing them is another matter. Nathan uncrossed his arms and stepped closer. Then let me help. If they want information, I'll give it. If they have questions, I'll answer them. What can I do to show them I'm not a threat? Zell exchanged a glance with Ayla before speaking. For starters, stay transparent. No hidden compartments, no secret files. And maybe spend more time with the rest of the crew. If they see you as a person rather than an unknown entity, they might start to trust you. Nathan nodded. Fair enough. I can do that. I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. Ayla smiled, feeling a small flicker of relief. Then we'll make it work. One step at a time. Speaking of steps, Nathan said, shifting the conversation, is there anything else I should know about your customs? I don't want to make any missteps and give the council more reasons to doubt me. Well, Ayla began, her expression softening. There are certain gestures you might avoid. For example, placing both hands on the table while speaking can be seen as confrontational. Keep one hand resting at your side or holding your drink. And eye contact, Zell added. Too much can come off as aggressive, but too little makes you look dishonest. It's all about balance. Nathan nodded thoughtfully. All right, no table slapping, measured eye contact. Got it. Ayla chuckled. It's not that strict. Just be mindful. The tension in the room began to ease as they shifted to lighter topics. Nathan asked about their daily routines, their food sources, and their hobbies. Zell, despite his earlier reservations, found himself explaining the intricacies of their agricultural systems, the careful cultivation of crops in the station's biodomes, and the seasonal festivals tied to their harvests. I'd love to see those biodomes, Nathan said. If it's allowed, of course. Ayla nodded. I'll arrange it. They're quite beautiful, especially during the bloom cycle. Sounds like a plan, Nathan replied. Thanks, both of you. I know this can't be easy having an outsider here. It's not as hard as you think, Ayla said, a hint of warmth in her voice. Zell smirked. Just don't make us regret it. Nathan grinned. I'll do my best. As the conversation wound down, Ayla felt a cautious optimism growing in her chest. Despite the council's concerns, Nathan had shown nothing but good intentions. Perhaps, given time and trust, they could navigate these doubts together. Chapter 6. The Expedition. Ayla glanced at the control console, then back at Nathan. You're sure about this? He grinned, adjusting the shoulder strap of his pack. What's an expedition without a little uncertainty? Zell snorted from the far corner, where he was double-checking the equipment. Uncertainty's one thing. Volunteering to walk straight into the unknown. That's a whole different category. Ayla rolled her eyes at Zell's comment. It's not unknown. This sector's just not very well charted. There are reports of ruins on the surface, older structures that no one's properly documented. I've always wanted to see them. Nathan fastened the last buckle on his pack. And now you have an explorer to help. Or an explorer to babysit, Zell muttered, earning a sharp glance from Ayla. You don't have to come, you know, she shot back. Like I'd let you two wander off without a proper guide, Zell said, slinging his own pack over one shoulder. Besides, someone has to keep an eye on Nathan here. He's still getting the hang of our tech. Nathan grinned. I'm a fast learner. We'll see, Zell replied, heading toward the airlock. Let's get moving. The surface of the planet was a study in contrasts. Shimmering rock formations jutted from the ground, their crystalline edges refracting sunlight into rainbow patterns across the landscape. Beneath their boots, the terrain alternated between sandy stretches and patches of hardy vegetation. Ayla led the way, her scanning device held out in front of her, occasionally pausing to adjust its settings. Nathan kept pace with her, his eyes constantly roving over the scenery. You never told me your planet looked like this. Ayla shrugged. It's not my planet, technically. This station was built here because it's a stable point in the sector. But this world, Trancash, is unclaimed. Untamed. Untamed? Nathan repeated, as if savoring the word. Does that mean we'll run into wildlife? Possibly, Zell answered from a few steps behind. Nothing too dangerous, though. The life forms here tend to be small, scavenger types. Harmless unless you provoke them. Well, let's not provoke anything, Nathan said, his tone light. They walked for over an hour, climbing a low ridge that offered a sweeping view of the plains below. Ayla pointed toward a jagged outcrop in the distance. That's where we're heading. The ruins are just beyond it. Nathan shielded his eyes against the sun. How much farther? Not too far, Ayla replied. Another hour, maybe. Zell let out a mock groan. Great. My feet are thrilled. Do you always complain this much? Nathan asked, turning to Zell with a grin. Only when it's warranted, Zell shot back. And right now, I'd say it's warranted. The banter made the journey feel shorter, and soon enough they reached the outcrop. Ayla led them around its base, and there, hidden in the shadow of the rocks, were the ruins. Broken stone columns rose from the ground, weathered by centuries of wind and rain. Carvings covered the surfaces, spirals, glyphs, and patterns that Ayla immediately began documenting. Nathan crouched near one of the columns, tracing a faint symbol with his finger. These are incredible. Any idea who built them? Ayla shook her head. No records match this style. They might have been an isolated group, or even a species that no longer exists. That's uplifting, Zell muttered. Hopefully, we're not walking into some ancient trap. Always the optimist, Ayla replied. But no, there's no sign of any danger here. Just history. Nathan stood and adjusted his pack. Well, let's get to work. What do you need from us? Ayla handed him a scanning tool. Start over there. Look for anything that stands out. Unusual carvings, pieces that don't fit the pattern. She turned to Zell. You can help me with the central structure. The data from this pillar might tell us something about the purpose of these ruins. Sure thing, Zell said. But if a trapdoor opens and we fall into a pit, I'm blaming you. Ayla smiled. Noted. For hours, the three of them worked side by side, cataloging every detail of the site. Nathan occasionally called Ayla over to ask about a specific carving or to get her opinion on a faintly glowing stone embedded in the ground. Zell, despite his grumbling, provided steady assistance, climbing onto precarious ledges to reach higher glyphs or hauling equipment from one structure to another. As the day wore on, the light began to shift. Ayla looked up and saw the twin suns dipping toward the horizon. We should head back soon. The temperature will drop once the sun set. Nathan stood, stretching his arms. We've made good progress. I'm glad I came along. Even though you're not a historian? Ayla asked, raising an eyebrow. Especially because I'm not a historian, he said. You've got the knowledge. I'm just here to see things for myself, to be part of the discovery. Discovery doesn't pay the bills? Zell muttered, wiping his hands on his tunic. But hey, at least it's interesting. They began packing up their equipment, and Ayla couldn't help but smile at the camaraderie that had developed between them. Despite Zell's initial doubts, he and Nathan worked well together, almost as if they'd been a team for longer than a few days. The ruins had given them a reason to trust each other, to rely on one another's strengths. As they started the trek back to the station, Ayla looked over at Nathan, who was still gazing at the horizon. What's on your mind? Just thinking about how much there is out here, Nathan said. This planet, these ruins. It's all new to me, and yet it feels oddly familiar, like I was supposed to find this place. Ayla considered his words. Maybe that's what exploration is, finding the familiar in the unfamiliar. Nathan glanced at her, a hint of a smile on his face. Maybe. They continued walking, the three of them together, the quiet growing comfortable as the shadows lengthened and the stars began to emerge overhead. Chapter 7, The Misunderstanding. Ayla sat at the station's central terminal, her fingers hovering over the controls as a faint sense of unease settled in her chest. The day had started out promising enough, with Nathan volunteering to help Zell repair an aging power relay in one of the station's lower sectors. She thought it would be a simple task, something to keep him occupied and help strengthen the fragile trust her people were beginning to offer. But then the alert came. Zell stormed into the control room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a scowl. Ayla, we have a problem. She turned toward him, her pulse quickening. What happened? It's Nathan, Zell said, shaking his head. He triggered a security lockout in the relay chamber. Ayla frowned. That's not a big deal. Those locks reset automatically after. Zell cut her off, his tone sharp. He was poking around the restricted access panel, the one connected to our main systems. Ayla's mouth went dry. Why would he do that? He knows the rules. That's the question, Zell replied, crossing his arms. You need to talk to him before the council hears about this. Where is he now? She asked. Quarters, I think, Zell said. But Ayla, be careful. This could look really bad. She nodded, rising from her seat. I'll handle it. Ayla found Nathan in the small guest quarters assigned to him. He was seated on the edge of his bunk, examining a handheld device that looked out of place against the station's more streamlined equipment. He glanced up as she entered, and immediately saw the worry on her face. What's wrong? He asked. You tell me, Ayla said, trying to keep her voice steady. Zell says you were tampering with a restricted panel in the relay chamber. Nathan blinked, clearly caught off guard. Tampering? No, I thought it was part of the relay system. I didn't realize it was restricted. Ayla sighed. You're not authorized to access that panel. Those systems are directly tied to our station's core functions. If the council finds out. I didn't mean to cause any trouble, Nathan said quickly. I saw a malfunction indicator, and I thought I could help. It wasn't labeled clearly, at least not in a way I could read. I assumed it was just another part of the repair. Ayla studied him closely, looking for any sign of deception. You should have asked Zell before touching anything. You've been here long enough to know that. Nathan set the device aside and stood. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't think it through. I just wanted to be useful. The frustration in Ayla's chest softened at his apology. It's not just about you wanting to help, Nathan. This is about trust. The council's already on edge about your presence here. If they hear you accessed a restricted panel, it could set back everything we've been trying to build. I understand, Nathan said. I'll explain it to them if I have to. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Ayla hesitated. You're willing to do that? Of course, he said firmly. I didn't come here to cause problems. If they need an explanation, I'll give it. She nodded slowly, her initial anger replaced by a cautious relief. All right, I'll speak with them and make sure they know it was an honest mistake. But, Nathan, please next time just ask first. I will, he promised. When Ayla met with the council later that day, she presented Nathan's case as clearly as she could. She described how he'd misunderstood the panel's purpose, how he'd thought he was simply helping with the relay repair. There was some skepticism, as she expected, but in the end, the council agreed to let the incident slide, on the condition that Nathan be more closely supervised during any technical work. Returning to Nathan's quarters, Ayla found him pacing, clearly uneasy. When she stepped inside, he stopped and turned to her, his expression tense. Well? He asked. They'll let it go, she said. But you need to be more careful. They'll be watching. Nathan let out a long breath, relief evident on his face. Thank you, Ayla. I'm sorry to have put you in that position. I believe you, she said. Just remember, trust takes time. Mistakes like this don't help. I get it, Nathan said. I'll make it right. Ayla studied him for a moment, then gave a small smile. I'm glad you understand. We'll figure this out. They stood there in silence for a moment, the tension slowly dissipating. Ayla felt a faint flicker of hope that, despite this setback, they could continue to build something meaningful. Something that could overcome the barriers between their worlds. Chapter 8, Unity and Truth. Ayla and Nathan stood side by side in the station's largest meeting chamber, the room filled with the quiet hum of anticipation. The council members had gathered around the circular table, their expressions a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Zell, ever the cautious voice, lingered near the entrance, his arms crossed as he watched the scene unfold. Nathan shifted his weight slightly, leaning toward Ayla. How do you think this is going to go? She offered him a small, reassuring smile. They've agreed to listen. That's more than we could have hoped for a week ago. Now it's up to us to make our case. Us? Nathan repeated, the word carrying a sense of determination. All right then. The senior counselor, a tall figure with sharp, discerning eyes, cleared their throat. You've requested this audience to propose a formal partnership between our station and your Terran Alliance. Is that correct? Nathan stepped forward, his voice steady. That's correct. We believe that by working together, we can benefit both our peoples. Your technology and understanding of this region's unique conditions, combined with our exploration and resource-gathering capabilities, create an opportunity for mutual growth. Another counselor raised an eyebrow. And what assurances do we have that your intentions are purely cooperative? We've seen what can happen when outsiders seek to take advantage. Nathan didn't flinch. I understand your caution, but my crew and I have no interest in taking anything from you. My presence here, my every action, has been about learning from you, not exploiting you. I think my time here has proven that I'm committed to transparency and collaboration. Ayla glanced at the counselors, then took a step forward herself. I've spent enough time with Nathan to know his words are true. He's shown nothing but respect for our culture and our way of life. He's even learned some of our language and traditions. This is not a one-sided relationship. It's a chance for us to gain insight into a broader universe. The senior counselor studied them for a long moment, then turned their attention to Zell. You've been vocal in your doubts, Zell. What do you think of this proposal? Zell shifted uncomfortably, scratching the back of his head. It's no secret I wasn't thrilled about having him here at first, but I've seen how he works, how he listens, and, if I'm being honest, how he genuinely wants to help. I think we'd be foolish not to at least try this partnership. The room fell silent as the counselors exchanged glances, their faces unreadable. Ayla's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for their response. Finally, the senior counselor spoke again. Your arguments are compelling, and it's true that your presence here, Nathan, has been more transparent than we expected. We will consider this proposal carefully. In the meantime, we ask that you continue to prove your commitment through your actions. Nathan inclined his head respectfully. I'll do whatever it takes. With that, the meeting adjourned, the counselors retreating to their private chambers to deliberate. As the room emptied, Zell walked over to Ayla and Nathan, his expression unreadable. Well, he said after a long pause, I didn't think they'd actually take it seriously. Nathan offered a half-smile. That makes two of us. Ayla let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It's not a yes, but it's not a no. That's a start. Nathan looked at her, a trace of relief in his eyes. Thanks for standing by me. I couldn't have done this without you. We're in this together, Ayla said simply. If this partnership works, it'll be because we found a way to trust each other. Zell crossed his arms. Don't get too comfortable. They're still watching your every move. Nathan nodded. I wouldn't expect anything less, but I'll keep proving myself. As the three of them left the chamber, Ayla felt a cautious optimism that, with time and effort, they could build something lasting, something that would benefit not just themselves, but their entire communities.